as I started putting pressure on that trigger, that's when I believe the hand of an angel reached out to me in my darkness. And it's something that the people are probably looking at me. It's like I'm some crazed lunatic, psycho at this point. And this hand reached out for me. It didn't touch me. It just waited for me to reach for it. Gave me a choice. And I felt like I was falling down to an abyss of just a black hole. And I had this one piece of hope. Didn't even know what it was. It was in November, and even though it was cold, I really didn't wear the coat to cover any kind of coldness. I was covering it to cover the weapon and all the ammo. It was a camouflage, because I was numb to any kind of environment, or pain for that matter, which I'll get into here in a minute. So, pulled up to the school. It was probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And there was no sitting in the car, oh man, should I do this? Is this, no. I pulled right up, got the rifle, stuck it on my coat, and walked methodically right towards the front door. And my mind is thinking, okay, so Satan is like laughing right now. He's enjoying this, right? His demons are dancing around me. And I'm just saying that on a general level. I'm not saying I saw demons dance around, but I'm saying there were demons dancing around me. And they, when I walked in that school and started shooting, I'm trying to say this without making myself look like I'm something bigger or greater or badder than I really am. You know what I mean? I want, because I know there's a kid out there that's contemplating this, is that a SWAT team negotiator asked me one time, I was at a conference, and he says to me, what do you think we should do when there's a high school shooting now? And I said, you should take them out. No questions asked. And he looked at me and he shook his head and he goes, amazing. I said, because if my child's in that school, he's already made that choice of death. But if my child's in that school, I don't want my child being taken away. Now that I have children and grandchildren, it's a whole different perspective than being 17 years old walking into a school. But anyway, so I just started shooting when I walked in that school. It was a bolt-action rifle. And I just kept unloading shells across the hallway. Wasn't screaming, was silent. I was numb. I was pretty much a zombie. There was no empathy. There were not humans in the room anymore. It was just flesh, dead flesh. I remember the smell of gunpowder constantly in the room or in the hallway. And as I walked up about 200 feet, there was an office, and there were a lot of people in that office, probably about 14, 15 people. And I took the butt of the gun out of rage, and again, I couldn't feel anything. I was in this just total rage mode. I bet if you checked my blood pressure, it probably would have been 240 over something. Heart rate would have been crazy. It's almost like I was on this adrenaline, spiritual darkness, adrenaline rush. And I started smashing out all these windows. I still have the scar here. Big chunk of meat came off this hand, and blood was going everywhere. And back then they had this metal inside the glass, so when it broke, it just laid down. And it was the goal at that point was to create fear within the people in that room. And as they screamed for their lives, I fed on that fear. And then I went in the room, and the room was probably, it was a pretty big office. And I just started shooting in there. But I never shot level, I shot above their heads. And some scattered to the back, and some scattered out the door, and some just dropped. And the screams were something you'll never forget. Because in their mind, their life is over. So, reliving that situation, I went ahead and started kicking in the doors in the office because I knew some of them were hiding in the offices. And I kicked in this one door, and when you kick it in, it's about the size of that office behind you there. And it was dark, no light on. And all of a sudden, and I went to the next one, I kicked it in, and it was dark. But all of a sudden, out of the darkness, I heard, "Jamie, we're in here." It was an older gentleman. And what he did was humanize me. You saw him say, he called the human that was no longer there, he called him out. And he said my name. He said my actual God-given name, "Jamie, we're in here." I didn't even know who this guy was. And he had two other teachers in there with him, and it was the principal of the school. And I think in his mind, his defense mechanism was to humanize me, to recognize who he was, so that I would not harm him. And it worked. Because I had to re-register. Like now, I'm no longer people screaming and falling on the floor. Now I actually have somebody who's calm and calling my name out from the darkness, and it's the principal of the school. And it kind of like throwing cold water on an ember or something like that. And I said, "Come out." He came out, and the two teachers went over where the other people were. And then I found out later on there was teachers hiding in the back offices that I never found the entire time for almost 2 days. And so I went back out in the main office and went down the hall where the slit in the window is about this tall and this wide. And that's where snipers had shots on me, was through that window. So I shouldn't be talking to you right now. They had green light to kill on sight and red light, do not fire until order is given by the commander to take the shot. And that's actually in the book. And so then my rate, like I said, the first 15, 30 minutes, the rage is now dropping. Now it's the point of becoming waiting for death. And I'm fighting this battle that they know nothing about within my whole realm of who I am and inside me. And voice the night before became many voices at that point, and they were screaming, we had a deal. And I think as they were chanting and badgering and I said, no more. This was about midnight, I guess. It started at 10 a.m., so there's a lot of time there. This is about midnight. And I said, no more, because all they wanted me to do was take the lives that were in the room. And I went ahead and put the gun in my mouth, got down on the floor on my knees, just like I did in my bedroom. But this time I had 9 people sitting there with me to watch the whole thing. And what they didn't understand is that I had to, or they didn't understand the battle I was dealing with. You know, that was my road to Damascus moment, on the floor with that gun in my mouth. And as I started putting pressure on that trigger, that's when I believe the hand of an angel reached out to me in my darkness. And it's something that the people are probably looking at me like I'm some crazed lunatic, psycho at this point. And this hand reached out for me. It didn't touch me. It just waited for me to reach for it. Gave me a choice. And I felt like I was falling down to an abyss of just a black hole. And I had this one piece of hope. Didn't even know what it was. Didn't know any Bible verses, didn't know, go to church, didn't do any of that stuff. Hadn't killed anybody physically. And I reached up and I touched this hand. And it had a white robe on it, about up to the elbow, so it was reaching in my darkness, and it just waited. And I reached up and I just touched it. That's all I did, was touch it. All of a sudden, it felt like someone took and calmed 100-foot waves to a shining golden pond within my spirit. And I felt this rage of no, like a spear going through my body. Like something was killing something inside of me. And this lady fell over, and she was rocking back and forth. And when she fell over and rocking back and forth, she was crying with her hands over her face and said, no, you're just a kid. You haven't hurt nobody. You don't have to do this. You don't have to take your life. And she was crying. I didn't even know who she was. And she's pleading for my life after I put her life in danger. And but she had a gold cross that was swaying from her neck, and it pierced my right eye. And when it pierced my right eye, that's when everything changed, when the hand reached out for me, and the spear went through me, and it was a transformation in a split second. And in that part of the transformation, I screamed at this girl, because I didn't care about her sitting there. What I cared about was that cross. I wanted it away from me. And I told her, I said, get out. And she looked at her like me, like, what did I do? She didn't know what happened. But see, that's what people don't realize, is the cross confronts our sin, you see, because the blood on the cross is where the power lies. And that blood on that cross that gold cross she had, the symbolization of it confronted who I really was and who I could be. And so she got up and ran out. SWAT team negotiator called. What are you doing? We almost took this lady out. And at that point, my whole personality changed in the room. And for the next 7 hours, every hour, I'd let one hostage go for Coke or coffee. And then I'd let 2 go for pizza and ice cream. And I'd tell the guys and ask the guys, anything you want. What do you want? Are you hungry? What do you want? You know, I could get you a house. I can get you a car. What do you want? Right now, they'll give me anything. And because I'm going to be dead anyway, right? And so we get down to the last one, and the lady, she had a little wisdom about her. She looked at me, she said, I know what you're doing. And I said, what am I doing? She said, you're going to go out of here suicide by cop. And I looked at her, and I didn't say yes or no. I looked at her, and I said, I deserve this. You don't. Because now she is a human to me, and she has a family, and she has kids. And so I didn't want her to be killed. So when I told her to leave, she wouldn't leave. And her name was Joan. I don't know if she was a guidance counselor, a teacher's aide, or what, but she wouldn't leave. And so we argued for a good hour to get her to leave. The SWAT team negotiators saying, why don't you send in the last one out? And I said, she won't leave. He said, what do you mean she won't leave? I said, she will not leave. But she was the smartest one in the room because she knew exactly what I was about to do. So about an hour passed, and I came up with this idea, because at that point I had lost so much blood. I was so weak from earlier the day before. She could have easily taken me over. And I said to her, I said, let's go. And so she grabbed a hold of me, and there was a line of SWAT guys lined up with their weapons drawn. And on the other side of the hallway, because they were up at the top of the steps on the hallway, and that side was open for bullet spray. And so we walked out, and I just pushed her body away from me as far as I could so that they could get a clean shot. Not making me a hero, I believe I was human again, to where they would not kill this lady. And I know I skipped a couple parts there, but I had thrown the gun out where the police officer had thrown the gun out, and I pointed away from the police so it wouldn't shoot when I threw it against the wall. And it didn't misfire. So when I pushed this lady away from me, I went for the gun again because I knew they weren't going to shoot then. Because they should have took the shot, and they didn't take the shot. I went for the gun again, and my hand was probably about 12 inches away from the gun. And I just laid there with my head facing in the opposite direction, as a coward does when he wants to die. And all I said was 2 words. I said, forgive me. I don't even know what I was talking to or who I was talking to. I just said, forgive me. Because I thought that was the last 2 words I was ever going to say. But instead of gunshots, I heard these click sounds from their weapons. It was the safeties. I'm assuming it was the safeties that they took off their guns, because no words were spoken at that point. And during that 30 seconds of the longest 30 seconds of my life, waiting to be killed, which I deserved, by the way, that same hand came back the same robe, the same arm. And it reached over where my hand was closest to the gun. And again, it gave me an option, a way out. And I slowly pulled back and touched this hand, and I pulled my hand behind me. And once my hand was behind me, they came in and did their job, what they had to do. So when they took me outside, it was pandemonium. Anyway, when they took me straight to the hospital. In fact, on the cover of the book, that's actually coming out of the hospital. And if you'll see the guy standing next to me in the cover, that's Don Grant, the negotiator, right there. And there's a lot that I didn't tell you of conversations that we had. One was, during the rage part, when I told him, if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to start lining bodies up in the hallway. All these different things were that he was trained on to understand how to handle these situations. I think Don could see the pain beyond my words, where I can see the pain beyond these kids that are destroying these businesses downtown right now. And but I know a loving God that loves them just as much as he loves me and can change their life. So they get me in the SWAT the room, the interrogation room. And they set me down there and they said, okay, who's working with you? And I was like, what? Who was working with you? And see, at that point, I'm self-inflicting against myself. I want to be killed. I was going to kill myself in my cell. I was going to, I just want to be dead. Put me in prison for life. Give me execution. Whatever you got to do. Put me in a hole. Don't feed me. I don't care. Just let me die. The woe is me. I'm the victim kind of person, they said, so who was working with you? And I said, nobody was working with me. I said, there's no way. You had to have a radio or communication or some kind of scanner to know when we had the order for green light to shoot to kill for the snipers and red light to hold the shot. I said, because every time the red light was on, you showed yourself. We had a shot, a headshot, a body shot. But every time the green light was on, you were nowhere to be found. In fact, years later, when I met with Fairfax County SWAT team just several years ago, they asked me that very question. Why did you position this here and that there and this here? And they're doing it now for training reasons. And now I even understand more now what that guy was telling me in that room, in that interrogation room that day. So, another miracle. The miracle's just, I think we use that term a little loosely, but for me it's a miracle because I'm still breathing. So another miracle piled on another miracle piled, another miracle, and finally you get to the point of, this can't be me anymore. This can't be just a coincidence. Something's happening here. So that's what happened in the school from the time I got out, going into facing 144 years.